zoomed back, so I don't know if they took a different route.
Good morning. Welcome everyone to our January 23rd, 2023 Board of County Commissioners Strategic Planning Meeting. It is 9 o'clock. Let the record reflect that all 5 commissioners are present and our executive management team. And we are going to be starting off with Mike Burgess, our county lobbyist. Is he ready?
Hello, commissioners.
Good morning, Mike.
How are you all?
Good. I think, yeah, Maura, how are you? Waking up. Everything's starting over there, so.
It's good. I mean, it's honestly, it's pretty, it's just busy. It's always super busy this time of year. There's really a high volume. I don't notice it any different than any other year, frankly. The fact that it's been in person, I think has probably increased the volume when legislators are together. They can just frankly can talk more and get more introduced. But I haven't done any comparison on the volume side, but for me, it feels about the same. We race to the February 17th cutoff is what I'm looking forward to when things start to funnel down. So a few items here that are kind of follow-ups from the previous times we have met. On the increasing the supply and affordability of the condo units, that is essentially the condo liability bill that I know we have an interest in. It has a hearing this week. I'm looking at the exact time here. And if it's looking at the proponents of that bill, a number of Spokane interests have signed in favor of that. That bill, it's being heard later this morning at 10:30. And with your, I think it's given where it fits on the legislative agenda, I plan to sign in pro unless I heard otherwise from you all. This looks to be the vehicle, both with a House and Senate version, but very bipartisan in nature. Don't know if you have any comments there, but I did plan to sign you on your behalf in favor of the bill later this morning.
I think everybody's good with that.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Next bill, the energy standards in commercial buildings. We talked about this last week, and I mentioned that there was a bill out there that dealt with the issue and was more focused on the public buildings that were not county owned. It would have been like, the state college buildings and other state buildings. The bill has a hearing on the 27th. And as part of that bill, it sets up a work group that did not include county representation. I've talked to the folks at the Association of Counties. They have had conversations with the prime sponsor. We believe that counties are going to be added to that. So that's a good thing that will be part of the discussion. And what it would do is would delay the standards by 2 years. Unfortunately, that's not, the final solution, but setting up a work group and being able to participate in it sets the table to lay out the actual costs to the legislature to figure out what the impacts of this are going to be. This goes a lot further than the public buildings. Private building interests will be represented in that, whether that be from privately owned convention centers or large office complexes and things like that. So pretty broad recognition of the cost impacts associated with the standards that are in statute. And this work group, the hope would be they discuss that and come up with some recommendations to make to the legislature in the next for the next session in 2024. At this point, I think it's the best place we can get on this issue. I don't see a lot of will amongst legislators to provide just straight funding to impacted buildings, a lot of pressure on the capital budget, those types of things. So right now, this is where it is. It's in a good spot in terms of the county's participation. So that's more of an update on that one. That, like I said, it does. Yes, sorry.
Commissioner French has a question.
Yes,
Mike, at the last LSC meeting last week, several of us were talking about this bill. It's great to be part of at the table. But there's really a lot of fear that this will become an unfunded mandate for counties and no path forward in how we satisfy it. And for a lot of counties, this is not a $1 million, $2 million idea. This is a 10 to 20, $30 million idea with no path forward on how to fund it. So just want to let you know that that's part of the conversation going on so far.
Appreciate that, Commissioner. And the hope obviously would be with a study or a work group coming together with recommendations, those things would all be put on the table. And I know your staff is in a good spot to participate in that. Obviously, if that's the will of you all, if the bill does pass, to have someone from Spokane County participate, because normally how that goes is Wasac gets a representative, but then they look to the counties themselves to have somebody participate. So maybe down the line, that's something that we could have to make sure that we're at the table there.
So that representation should come from both sides of the state, not just a continuation of I-5 corridor ruling the state.
Good point. I will look at the amendment language when that happens. Okay. I'm just making a note here. The next bills on the agenda were the vehicular pursuit legislation. At this point, neither bill has been scheduled for a hearing. And there was some media coverage and comments made at a press conference on the Senate Democrat side last week that I don't think there's an urgency to move the bill on the Senate side for a number of reasons that we don't need to get into right now. The hope would be that the House version moves, but again, it does not have a hearing yet. So other than that, I don't have a lot to update you on. I know that the pressure is building on that issue, so we'll have to just keep an eye on it as the session moves forward. And then the next one there is the prejudgment interest legislation. This is the one that has some potential cost impacts to you all. The association, along with virtually every other public entity, a lot of school districts and whatnot, have signed in opposition to this bill, some testifying, some not. I had planned, as we did in the past on this legislation, to sign in opposed, unless you all have any opposition to that. Okay. I will do that then. And then moving down to some newer items, wanted to update you on, this is the lease of the mobile and manufactured home communities. I do need to get that information on what we do with the tenants of those projects. I need to get that information so I can get that to the legislators. As you recall, I had a good hallway conversation with the prime sponsor of the House bill, but emailed our concerns with the Senate bill. The Senate bill got a hearing last week. Both bills, as I mentioned, have had the hearing, but the bills have not been scheduled to be voted from committee yet. But I'd like to follow up on that discussion with the House prime sponsor this week as soon as I can, once I get that.
So, Mike, did you get the letter that I sent out last week?
No, Commissioner, I got the DOT letters.
All right, I'll send it again this morning. I did I think it's like a 2 or 3 paragraph letter last week. Sent off to you to kind of give you a layout of how it impacts Fairchild and stuff. So
okay, I'll check my inbox.
Yeah,
I'll check my inbox, Commissioner. Sorry about that if I missed it.
Oh, it might have gone to Amy.
No, that's your stuff that I send to Amy. There you go. Touche. You got me. The next bill, 1181-5203, the GMA climate bill. So we talked about this last week, and your staff had joined us, and then also transitioned to talking about the capital facilities plan definition legislation we were thinking of running. I think at this point, we might have a good chance to incorporate that capital facilities plan language into the GMA bill. I've been working with some of my colleagues on that. I think that's the best avenue at this point. Delving into the issue here on that definition, I think we'd have a difficulty of getting a standalone bill passed in that regard for a couple of reasons. And I think at this point, this is the path I want to go down to figure out a way if we can get that amendment language taken care of within that bill. I think that bill is going to, the GMA climate bill is going to pass this year. I'd be very surprised if it didn't. And so we have a vehicle out there and continue to work that process as things move forward. Commissioner French, I'm curious if you have any comments about what was brought up at the LSC meeting. I see Scott just turned on his camera there too. If he's got some comments, I'd like to hear them.
Yeah, I did raise it at the LSC meeting, and there was, I think, overall interest in pursuing it. I think they were going to put it in Paul's hands to pursue and then come back to us with some suggestions. But it's now on LSC's radar.
Okay, yeah, and Paul's definitely who I've been talking to about that. So we've been working together on it.
Okay, and then I see that Scott is on and Jessica's here as well. So.
Oh, great.
Jessica, if you have any comments for Mike.
Oh, I think the only comments I have were I don't know that we've honed down the exact language that we wanted to use, and I think there was some discussion that still needed to be had on just exactly what our definition needed to be. So I've worked on some language incorporating more of the WAC in there, and maybe some minimum mandates that are suggested by the statute, just to kind of work in some suggestions from some of the commissioners. But I don't know how you want to go about kind of fine tuning the suggested language. We came with the original language last week, and then I've worked on some new language that I'm happy to share with the commissioners today if you want to look at that, just to kind of add some more, definition around that.
So Jessica, if you have more that you'd like to get to me, I can, get that to my colleagues. That'd be great, because this is going to be a continuing dialogue as this bill continues to move through the process.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we just are still working on what exactly we want to include.
Okay.
Commissioner King. So Mike, just so I'm understanding, you're saying that there's already this effort to incorporate different climate change considerations into the GMA, and you're suggesting adding in any other changes we want to see into that same effort.
Yes.
Have a better chance of getting passed, is what you're saying.
Yes, Commissioner.
Okay.
So the title of the bill supports amending in the capital facilities plan language. I think we'd have a political difficulty getting it passed, as I've had some conversations since we talked last week. So I think this is our best avenue to get this, knowing too, though, that the language we would request will probably have to be whittled down to some degree as well because of that same political issue.
So Mike, how quickly do you need kind of final language from us if this is still changing here?
I mean, the sooner the better, but can I talk to Jessica and Scott, or one of the two, whichever, later this morning or later today about this too, to give me some more detail?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm available. I think, like I said, the one thing I can't do is say exactly what language we want to use, because I have to have the 5 commissioners tell us what they want. So,
but
I'm happy to chat about it more.
Understood. And I think if I give you some background too, that might help guide some of the language that you would suggest.
Sounds good.
Okay, if you can email me, and then we'll find a time to talk.
So
Thank
on
you.
the top of the last page, it says facilities D, fur suppression.
Yes, fur suppression.
Fur suppression.
I don't
you
like
got
those trees.
Opposed to fur?
We should get rid of them.
Okay.
Get them out of there. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll continue working on that one. The next one, I hope Rob is there, Lindsay's there.
Yeah, I'm here, Mike.
Perfect, thanks, Rob. So this is that, the PCB and consumer products legislation. Rob and I had a chance to talk, so obviously I want you to hear from him. but kind of in summary, what I'd heard from Rob was that the bill doesn't have direct impact on your water quality and your permitting process. But I believe there are some good aspirational aspects to this bill. And if the commissioners, if you all do support it, I think it'd be a good idea that if you wanted to have Rob speak to the committee, because the bill has a hearing later this week. I think it's Wednesday morning. So anyway, that's in summary, that's my summary, I guess. And obviously, Rob, I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, well, I'll just tee it up by saying that, I apologize for all this on a Monday morning, industry-wide reformulation. And that's basically getting these sorts of persistent chemicals out of our commerce system. And while it might not have a direct impact on our wastewater facility today, it has an impact on one of our businesses in this community right now. And that's Inland Empire Paper. They recycle paper, office paper. It comes into their facility and you know, they boil it down to turn it into pulp. Well, all those inks and dyes that are in those paper wind up going right through their process and out into the river. And their frustration is that the federal government, the US EPA, has relatively high levels set, like on the order of 50 parts per million. That sounds like maybe a small number, but compared to the water quality criteria, which are now in the part per quadrillion range, it's a complete disconnect. And so what this bill would basically ask is for Ecology to petition the United States EPA to look at the Toxic Substance Control Act. And through that act, they could enact legislation to reduce the amount of these persistent chemicals in some of these products, many of which are imported. And they really are very, based on my experience, it's not a very robust monitoring program. Okay, so there's PCBs that are coming in to our system. And so it's of great frustration to all of us that the EPA is so quick to set extremely stringent criteria, while at the same time not really taking steps to reduce these chemicals in certain products. And this reminds me of a situation. I joined the county almost 20 years ago, and not long after joining the county, I had the opportunity to sit on a meeting with the former utilities director with representatives from Procter & Gamble and other organizations that didn't like the idea of removing phosphorus from their cleaning products. Now, granted, the levels we're talking about are totally different here in terms of how much phosphorus we're getting up versus PCBs, but it's the same thing. And I would just say one more thing, and that is that this is only the beginning. And with other compounds like the PFAS compounds, which make the PCB problem look relatively simple, as we're getting to know, there are so many more different variants of that particular compound. So this is good. It's idealistic. Ecology has reached out to EPA before, and indeed the Toxics Task Force that the county is leading along with the city is preparing one of those petitions right now, and Ecology folks will be signing off on that as well to do this. So this is happening. So from my standpoint, this is a good thing, and the community, the nation, needs to keep a pressure on the EPA to address these chemicals, because it's not just us, it's everywhere. So it's a good thing. Will it get a lot of traction? I don't know.
So commissioners, you have a couple options. Obviously, you could direct us to sign in favor of the bill, or if you did want to have Rob speak on it. I feel that he's got some expertise in the issue that I don't have, that I think is beneficial, and the fact that we can testify virtually makes that work.
Sir, everyone okay with having Rob? Yeah, I think if that works, I'll let you coordinate with Rob and have Rob be the one to speak on behalf of it.
You got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Rob. The next bill, Commissioner French, you had asked me to flag this one, wanted to discuss it again. This is the lot splitting issue. I read through that bill over the weekend, and right now it's only for cities, if I understand it properly. And I don't know if you knew that when you had talked about it before, but just wanted to throw this back out because again, you noted it last week and wanted to bring it back up.
Well, it currently only applies to cities, but it's still, I think from the region standpoint, it's a good bill to support. And from an equity standpoint, it will help reduce the cost of housing, whether it's in the city or the county. I mean, in an ideal situation, I'd love to have the county in the same position, but it really needs to be done in the city. Not only from the standpoint of lowering the cost of housing and creating a pathway forward for folks to get into a home equity situation, but also to address, infill development regulations and a variety of other things. So even though it affects the city, I'd still be in support of it.
Okay. Commissioner, can I ask you, is that something that you'd want to see the bill expanded to counties doing this, or does it not work that way?
In an ideal world, it should be expanded to every lot inside the UGA, which is where we want to see density increase and stuff.
Right.
And so for older neighborhoods, that were developed prior to the Growth Management Act, this would be an opportunity to come back and do infill in those lots. So if it's inside the UGA, I don't know why you would not want to try and support something that would allow both home equity, home ownership and increased density. I mean, it just seems like it's consistent with everything else as part of the Growth Management Act. Why would we not? But absent it being inside the UGA, I think it really, it's more important that it at least be enacted for cities.
So Commissioner, I think some of that, not including the county, is, I think a lot of times there's a perception that counties are rural, that you don't have a lot of maybe say residential in your boundary. I think most folks associate with that with cities. So that's probably why it was drafted that way, and also to limit the scope a little bit. But I can reach out to the sponsor if it's the will of the commissioners here to inquire about expanding it to the inside the UGA. But still, we could support the bill as is too.
Yeah, I would not be in favor of it being countywide. Like you say,
Sorry, I misspoke there, but I meant it's inside the UGA.
Inside the UGA, it seems like inside the UGA is supposed to be urbanizing, and so why would we not treat it the same? But, that might be an argument for another day. I think at least ought to be available for cities.
Okay, then, so the bill, both the House and Senate bills have hearings this week. Am I hearing that we want to be supportive of those, or do we want to continue to think about that?
Support.
Yeah.
Sign in
I-
support, yeah.
I think you see enough people, everyone's shaking their head and yes, that signing in, having you sign in support would be good.
Okay, I will do so. Perfect. And then also, if it's okay with you, I'll poke around a little bit about the inside the UGA part and just kind of see what I hear.
Yeah.
All right.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Next one, 5290. I sent you this bill too, I think. Ron, are you controlling that? This one probably also came up at LC Commissioner, and this is one of the governor's bills, part of the housing plan. And the idea is to speed up the permitting process. I shopped this back to Jeff and some folks, I think in your building department. I'm sorry, the person's name has slipped my mind. Got an email back that said they'd have concerns with it and haven't seen more, which is fine. But I guess I need to know the nature of what the folks at your department, and I'm assuming it's your building department, the issues they might have with the bill, so I can relay that. But at this point, our county colleagues are in favor of this bill. So if you want to bring up the bill language, I mean, we might get a little bogged down in this, and so maybe this is something to talk about further. But there you go. Oop. Tell you what, while that's loading, the last one I can just, or one note down there, the North-South corridor letter, just to let you know that I got those letters, sent them all out to the appropriate legislators last week. So that task is done.
Thank you.
Okay. Yep. Going down into that, I think it's on the next section of the bill. There you go. There's some of the, if you go back up, that underlined language is some of the new language. And then there's obviously the new section below. But here's some of the things that would be thrust up upon you all to deal with if the bill passed. If you have a chance to glance through that, once you're ready, maybe go to the next page after you give the sign to do that.
So,
What's,
They're getting it.
well, what they're trying to do once again is harmonize state regulations across the state, make us look more like I-5 corridor. But it's the permitting process in the I-5 corridor is much more laborious than it is in Spokane County. We've streamlined a lot of our processes and stuff, but paragraph or subparagraph C there, 3C, increase the total square footage evaluation of the structure, thereby requiring upgraded fire access and fire suppression. This is an effort by the fire marshals across the state to require fire suppression systems in all residential structures. And it's done under the guise of making the homes safer, but the reality is new construction is not where the fire risk is at. The fire risk is in older structures, and this will exempt older structures. So we haven't accomplished anything other than continuing to increase the cost of new construction for residential properties being developed today. So it's really, while it looks good and feels good, the reality is it doesn't do anything to address the underlying problem, which is older structures and older building materials that do not have the same kind of fire resistance that modern day items do. But I think this is a West Side problem that they're trying to make a statewide issue.
looks like they're trying to make it easier to pull permits if you're not really gonna change. It's for like interior,
Like a remodel, but
Right.
you're not adding, as they say,
But then-
sleeping quarters or.
Commissioners, the bill goes further too when
I'm
you
not sure
get
what the point
to
of
the
it
next
is.
page.
Yeah.
So this is like a grant program to help counties, to assist counties and local governments in doing this.
Yeah, this did not come up at the
Okay.
LSC meeting last week and stuff, so I don't know that Wasac has weighed in on this yet.
Well, they're signed in pro, Commissioner, and that must be from their guiding principles or documents. So how about we do this? How about we watch, let's get through the hearings this week and kind of see where things are settling out. The issue there on the fire suppression, I have to imagine others would have the similar observation that you had. And then in the meantime, your staff can get some analysis to me on what they're thinking as well, and we can revisit this next week. And then maybe when you all are here this week talking to legislators, we might put a placeholder on this in their mind. And maybe between now and then, we might have some more detail from your staff as to what some of the issues they see are. Does that sound like a good way to do this?
Yeah, I mean, part of the
Yeah.
problem is on the west side of the state, some of the counties are taking, 2 and 3 months to permit a residential structure where we can do it in
Yeah.
a matter of a couple of weeks.
So
And
Commissioner,
stuff,
do you see then, okay, understood that this is to get at the logjam of permits in other jurisdictions. You all are not having that same problem. In fact, if you could share with me your permit timeline, like how
Yes.
fast you get them.
Like, I think,
Jeff just let me know that it's James Moore, our building
Okay.
director. So he's the one who's working on this. So
Perfect.
if you have any further questions though, let's ask him and then he's working on a response to you.
Okay, wonderful.
So maybe if you don't have James's email,
I have it, Commissioner. I just couldn't remember the name, and
okay.
so that helps. I made a note here, so I will get in touch with him.
Okay.
And
And I
we'll,
think, yeah, have him, send it out to the commissioners as well, so that way we know what his thoughts are and. we can
okay,
have-
and then maybe we'll revisit this next week. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
it looks like the intent is to move the process along for people to be able to get permits faster, but it may not be relevant to.
Well,
Spokane County.
correct, Commissioner. And the one thing I'm worried about, my next question was going to be, and again, maybe this is an answer for next week, but does the current language harm what you're doing now? Because if you're more efficient now, the bill's trying to make everyone else more efficient, but if you're already that efficient, anyway, you know what I'm saying.
Better picture, make
Yeah.
it less
So-
efficient.
So over on the other side of the state, some of the state agencies play a greater role in permitting process than they do here. And whether it deals with stormwater, whether it deals with fish barrier or a whole variety of other issues. And I know that some of the counties are very, very frustrated that it takes the state forever to get an answer. And that's one of the other things that delays the process. So maybe one of the efforts here is to try and get the state to be more responsive to counties as they try and permit and get projects into the ground. That might be one of the motivating factors. I'm conjecturing, I don't know that to be a fact. I've not talked to any other commissioners about that being the motivation, but that very well might be.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I just don't want to get in the way of the good work you're already doing. And we
Yep.
need to point that out. So that'll be helpful to talk to Mr. Moore and get the lowdown there. And we'll revisit this next week, and we can discuss it when I see you this week. And so that brings me to my next point here. Some appointments with delegation members. Some of you have reached out to me to set up meetings when you're here. I've done that. I had Senator Schessler asked me to set up a meeting with himself and Commissioner Cooney. I was meeting with Senator Schessler on another topic last week, and this came up. So I'm in the process of doing that. I also have some slots available with Representative Voles and Schmid that I just did requests because I had been asked by you all to make other ones. So I just wanted to try to cover as much of the delegation as possible. So from an internal process, I think I need some clarity from you all, like how you want me to handle this. I work for all 5 of you, not for just one of you, but I'm happy to set up meetings for one of you at any time. So I think that's kind of a discussion for you all to figure out, when I do these meetings, again, more than happy to set them up and coordinate them and go to the meetings. I'd like to go to as many of these as possible and touch on some of our legislative items. But you all have personal relationships with some of these legislators and probably want to talk about other topics as well when you're here. So this doesn't need to be decided right now, but I just wanted to throw out there that, probably need to figure out how we're doing that. And if you're comfortable doing it the way I just did it, let's just keep doing it that way. So probably a little bit of a housekeeping issue to talk about.
Yeah, and I think it'll be a good topic for a retreat as we look to having a commissioner retreat to talk about some of these issues as to how we handle them, so.
Okay.
we'll
All
add it
right,
to
well
the
then,
agenda.
the openings I have this week, I'll message you and let you know. And then if we can pick a few of you to go to them, that'd be wonderful.
Great. Mr. French?
But Amber, you were going to say something. And I don't wanna
Oh,
cut you off.
I just let Mike know if I could be helpful in any particular meeting with any particular legislator to let, So I think, Mike, you were gonna reach out to some of the delegation.
Right. I have a
Yeah.
meeting for you with Richelli, and then I'll message this to you. And then Billig wanted to meet after the GSI function that's in the rules room. So I think that might be the Four Corners thing, which I know everybody likes to see. But I don't know exactly, but he wanted to just do kind of a sidebar afterwards is the impression I got.
Okay,
But anyway, I'll relay that to you and coordinate getting you all to and from where you need to be.
Commissioner French.
So Mike, there were two bills that we talked about at LSC that might have an impact on the county
Perfect.
and or the city. One is the producer recycling bill.
Yes.
We have a very aggressive Smurf here, but operated by Waste Management, and then everything that doesn't go through the Smurf gets incarcerated, incinerated. And so I don't know that we really.
You're waiting to use that.
Yeah, I don't know. Wait. So while this might be well-intentioned for other counties, I don't know that it really benefits our constituents. And the problem with the bill, as I understand it in its current state, is that it will levy a tax, statewide tax on everybody, regardless of how you handle your solid waste. So we could be very efficient in terms of recycling and still have to subsidize other parts of the state because they're not as efficient as we are and stuff. So I think the WASAC took a position of being neutral with concerns on the bill. It was really interesting. It actually went through two voting cycles and failed twice in terms of trying to either get to support or even neutral. And so that you might take a look at that bill and see what your opinion is.
Commissioner.
And,
I'm very familiar with the bill. This is going to be one of the more lobbied bills all session. It's touching a lot of people. And there is some concern. I've heard that on the interaction of how it is with local governments. And as you could probably predict, depending on which local government it is, you could predict whether or not they're in favor of the bill or not. Mostly, and somewhat back to kind of that water quality discussion that, it can be very aspirational, but mechanically how it impacts your folks. I guess I could talk to Deb Geiger, right, about this. That might be a good conversation for me to have with her to kind of get her reaction to the bill. Does that sound fair?
Yeah, that was going to be my recommendation, to
Yeah.
circle back with Deb and find out more specifics about how it will
Well, then
impact.
maybe I'll talk to her. Maybe she can't join us next week, if that's okay.
Okay. And
Okay.
then the other bill that's out there that did not come to LSC yet, but I know the city's got concerns on it, and because we're partners with the city, I think we will probably have concerns about it too. And that's the carbon tax issue on the waste
Yep.
energy plant.
That's good. I was going to ask you about this at the end, so I'm glad you brought this up.
Okay, well, we're at the end, and this, because we use the plant for a regional disposal system, it's going to impact the county as well as the city, and I think the city is making a very good argument with regard to having the plant is better than sending everything to landfill and then having to deal with the methane gas created. There is no, emissions out of the plant anywhere comparable to what it would be with the landfill. So that's one bill that I think we ought to be at least educated on and supportive of.
Commissioner, that bill hasn't been introduced yet, to my knowledge.
It hasn't been yet, but I think I think what they're, according to some of the casual conversations I was having last week, they were looking for a sponsor at the House. They think they got one at the Senate, but
Right.
that's secondhand information. I don't want you to rely on that. But I
Okay.
know that this topic, and maybe that's circling back with the lobbyists for the city of Spokane to find out, hey, who are you talking to? And what do you think the probability of this bill coming forward to relieve? The problem is that the carbon tax bill now, the waste energy plant is going to be taxed. And what the city is trying to do is get an exemption from the tax, recognizing that it is more environmentally friendly than the alternative, which is landfill. And so that's my understanding of the issue. I think, based upon the argument as I understand it, it's something we can support, but it does have an impact on our county residents as well as city residents. You guys agree?
No, I mean, if you're gonna tax, then you should be taxing those landfills but they were exempted, as I understand it. So it's really a
Right. So there's
issue.
there was probably some definitional issues that do we still call it the waste to energy plant?
I do, because I'm old.
Okay. Well, so am I, Commissioner, but anyway, there was a question about whether or not that was included in the definition, and you're right, that this issue and others in the bill that were granted exemptions, whether that be the fishing industry is a big deal right now because they've gone out and bought their diesel now and there's a surcharge on it. It's impacting the construction industry, the ag industry. So some of this is all starting to come to fruition. But I read a news article about this and the city's desire to deal with it, and had seen that the bill had not been introduced. I went and looked for it, but I know who their lobbyists are. I will contact them today and see where they're at with it.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Well, I look forward to seeing you all here this week. I have the agenda for GSI, so I'll just be popping in and out as best I can.
Very good. We look forward to seeing you as well.
Great. Thanks, commissioners. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you.
We'll figure it out.
You had this all figured out, Amber.
So it looks like Kyle, you're up next.
Matt's up first.
Yeah.
Thank you. So we have more of our super exciting traffic code revisions ahead here. Come on, Matt, I gotta spice it up to some extent here. So we're gonna keep coming probably every week or two until we get caught up on these. We have a lot coming in after the new year here. So Matt will walk you through the traffic code revisions we will have hearings on coming soon.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me the time to brief you on these. They're an interesting mix today. There's some new roads up North Deer Park that are the bulk of these, but they're broken out because we're adding stop signs, we're establishing roads, and then we're setting speed limits, and those are all discrete actions. So we'll try and bundle them up as much as possible when we get to the hearings, just to not drag it out too much, but in the presentation here, it's a little choppy. You can see on the vicinity map on the left, these are up north, just at the north end of Deer Park. It's a new large lot subdivision. I forget how many lots, there were a bunch of lots in here, maybe 64 or 10-acre lots. So a fairly large rural development project. And this first one is just accommodating the new traffic flows from that and the connection that was created by adding a stop sign at the north end of Cedar where it tees into Montgomery. Previously, Cedar was a gravel road. City of Deer Park paved along the west side of their airport there, and then this development added asphalt. It's actually chip seal, but paved the surface going north and through their connection here. So this is just to accommodate the additional traffic. We're going to add a stop sign here to make sure that intersection is safe for the time being. Next slide. This is just a closer look at it, and you can see in the aerial here, they're gravel, but now the northbound Cedar and then the leg to the east are both paved. This next one is also up north. Next slide, please. This is right next to that new complex that Meade School District's built right at the intersection of Farwell and Market. Specifically, we're talking about the new elementary school, and it fronts on Hastings, and they're having issues with the kiss and go with dropping off kids and creating congestion right there. So they had requested no parking signs along Hastings, and we're just accommodating that request. Next slide. These are the establishments of those roads that we were just talking about. Next slide, please. And you can see where they tie in from Montgomery up to Hatch. Montgomery and Hatch were both existing, but this is making a nice paved connection from Aloyka Lake, which if you're familiar with that, that's one of the major east-west connections we have in the north end of the county. So having this connection to get people down into Deer Park a little more effectively and a little quicker is a nice connection, and it was built by the development. There were no county dollars in this, so that was a good thing for the community. Next slide. This is a close-up version of it. The scale's a little hard to get, but this is, I believe, like 1.5 miles or 2 miles of road. These are pretty big connections that would have been difficult for us to do. So development actually helped us a little bit on this one. Next slide. And this is the last one. These are just adding the stop signs to some of these intersections to keep them safe. These are new intersections, so we need to add the stop signs. Next slide. And you can see we're stopping Hatch southbound into it. Just usually we stop the leg of a T unless it totally doesn't make sense. That's kind of our default action. And then also we're stopping Tudor where it is southbound teeing into Montgomery. And I think that might be it. Oh, this is speed limits. Last but not least, we have to establish speed limits. If we pave a road in the rural area, by default, it's 45 miles per hour. So if we want anything else, we have to actually pass a traffic code revision. And for these roads, they're very residential. They're not very long. They turn pretty frequently, so it made sense to have a lower speed limit on them. So we're gonna propose 35 miles per hour on these roads. And that just close up. I think that's it. Is that the last one for the traffic code revisions? Good. All right, that's all I have. Does anybody have any questions on the traffic code revisions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're not leaving that, are you?
No, I'm sticking
Okay,
around.
good. Okay.
So our next item it has to do with the appointment of an advisory board member for the Newman Lake Flood Control Zone District. So Derek and Ben are here, are subject matter experts for everything Newman Lake. So they'll kind of brief, I know the new board members are probably not super familiar with our responsibilities out at Newman Lake and how this board is appointed.
Yeah, thank you very much. Ben Bradabo, Water Programs Manager for Spokane County. Opportunity to talk about Newman Lake Flood Control Zone District, which Spokane County manages. And just to take this opportunity to recognize Derek Villar, who's worked on this project for a number of years. And today is effectively, he becomes project manager. So promotion for Derek, and really appreciate his involvement here getting us where we are. So thank you, Derek. So this is just a few highlights of the district, and then the main purpose today is to just recommend appointment of a advisory board member that we have. And so the district was formed in 1968. It's funded through a mechanism where the people that are benefited around the lake are paying assessment on their property taxes. And so that was a process, just was revamped this last year and has been completed. It provides flood control. There's a dam at the south end of the lake that has an outlet structure, which then feeds into an excavated drainage ditch that goes to the Moab sump and then infiltrates into the Spokane Valley aquifer there. And so the county manages all of those, owns those properties. And then the final piece here is water quality improvement. So this flood control zone district pays a lot of attention to water quality as allowed. And one of the big projects we're doing is an upgrade to the existing system that's there now, and potentially a replacement of that using ARP funding and also state capital funding that we received this last year. So we're into a study on that last piece. Is we're just working to start a study to look at what's the right solution to improve water quality there for the long term, so that we have the right infrastructure there to manage water quality and protect the lake. And the main reason we're here is this final slide. Next slide, please. Is appointment of Dave Martin. And so there's an 8-member advisory board that assists the county. The county commissioners make decisions for the board, but we have county staff that works with an advisory board to make good decisions for the lake. It includes property owners that have different responsibilities. Some are rural, some are lakefront, some are timber owning. So a whole range of folks there. So there's one position that's open, and we interviewed candidates and selected Dave Martin, and then presented that to the other advisory board members, and they were in agreement to that. And so today, just describing that and then looking for approval of that on the next commission. Yeah.
So obviously, this is an example of where a committee, goes through this process and then makes a recommendation to us for a board appointment and stuff. So a great example of how we've used this with other committees and stuff.
And this is just for people that are within that Newman Lake zone.
Correct.
It's Josh's district.
Before you get away.
Yes.
I want to comment on something else that Ben has helped me with. It's not in my district, it's actually in Commissioner Cooney's district, but the president of the Shelley Lake HOA reached out to me and was complaining about the presence of algae in Shelley Lake and trying to find out whether we could use ARP money to address aeration of the lake and get rid of the algae and yada, yada, yada. Reached out to Jeff McMorris and they helped explain to her that you can't use ARP money to address private sector issues, and Shelley Lake is a private lake managed by the HOA. And so then she came and said, well, you know, we didn't have this problem before you did all the work you did up at Salty's Flats. And Salty's Flats actually drains down into Shelley Lake and provides the water for Shelley Lake and stuff. So I did reach out to Rob Lindsay and Ben and Kyle about, is there any legitimacy to that argument? And they did their research, and we had a meeting last week, week before last, and the results were no. So I did communicate that back to the president of the HOA and said that, you know, while we did do construction, none of the construction we did at Salty's had a negative impact on Shelley Lake. So that's the status of that issue as of 9:52 on Monday. So I share that with you because my guess is this is not over. And so there'll be ongoing conversation about how do they fix the aeration problem and the presence of algae in Shelley Lake and stuff. So I wanted to make you all aware of that so that now becomes our problem instead of my problem. So anyway.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Commissioner. And I'm available. Rob Lindsay is available to talk if there's more questions. And
Thanks for all your help too.
you're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Commissioners, if it's okay, I'll switch these two items from a timing perspective, and we'll have Deb brief this franchise agreement, and then I'll have Rob come in with his guests to talk about the voluntary stewardship program.
Okay, thank you.
So Commissioners, this is Deborah Firkins. She does a lot of our real estate work, and she's briefing you today on a franchise agreement with Nightcom.
Good morning, Commissioners. We got an application from Nightcom Inc. in order to install a fiber optic cable. As you can see, it's all on existing poles. They would be stringing it aerially along that area in order to serve a school. So this is their application for that. Franchises are almost like a lease to be within the county road right-of-ways with different utilities. And so it's an agreement that we go through and work out with the applicant on what they have to do. If, say that we wanted to relocate this road, they have to move at their cost, not at our cost, in order for us to move a road. And that is what a franchise agreement is. It says that they have to play nice with everybody else on the road and that we are the owners of the road. And I would suggest that you guys approve this franchise.
Is on the agenda for,
It's on the agenda, it's a consent item. No, this is a hearing, sorry. It's a hearing item. We will take public testimony for a franchise so that anybody can bring their issues with a company that might be serving in that area within our road right-of-ways. Yes?
What's the process to apply for a franchise? Do you typically get multiple applicants or not in this type of
Well,
situation?
Usually they call, they want to be within our road right-of-ways. We have an application that we have them fill out. They submit their application. And in that review of their application, we're going to make sure that they're not trying to tear up one of our roads that we just built in the last 5 years. We're seeing if they're aerial or if they're in our road right-of-way. We're checking to make sure that the franchise contract that we have between them and us, that the language is good for both of us. And so we're going back and forth with that, but mainly it's to make sure that they're within our road right of ways, that they're not causing us problems. Anything else?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Deb. We have one more item here. Rob Lindsay's back, and we have a couple of guests from the Spokane Conservation District to brief the voluntary stewardship program. For those of you that may or may not be familiar with that, with regards to also there's a contractual item that'll be coming through for board approval shortly.
Go ahead and take those
These
seats
three?
there. Yep.
Okay, great, thank you. Great, thank you, Gina. Got the slide up there. Ron, okay. I haven't done this in a while. Thanks, Ron. Okay,
So, and Ron, do you want to introduce your guests?
yes, I definitely will be doing that. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm back. So here to give a presentation this morning on what's called the Voluntary Stewardship Program. And I'm pleased to be joined by my friends Lindsay Chudas and Jacob Taylor from the Spokane Conservation District. Spokane Conservation District, as you probably know, has been a partner of our organization for many years, helping us to address challenges and successes, primarily in interacting with our agricultural and rural sectors. So I'm happy to have them here today. And I'm here to talk about the Voluntary Stewardship Program. Okay, and there are basically two purposes for the presentation today, and one of them is actually fairly routine. The Voluntary Stewardship Program is it's a group of stakeholders throughout the community representing the agricultural community, the environmental community, local government, other interested stakeholders. And as part of that, and part of this program, the group needs to periodically be updated. And so that takes the authority of the board to do that. And so Lindsay's going to be speaking to that soon, because very soon you're going to be seeing a resolution to update the working group. And again, I'll let Lindsay and Jacob speak to that. But as part of this, with the incoming commissioners, it made sense to basically kind of step back, wait a little bit, and give a larger program to bring you up to speed on this, and then also to give Lindsay Chudas an opportunity to give a report on the basically 2022 activities within the voluntary stewardship. So just in a nutshell, the voluntary stewardship program was authorized by the legislature via House Bill 1886 in 2011. And that's when actually right before that. And not long after that, the Board of County Commissioners authorized Spokane County to participate in that process. The way that the legislature authorized the Washington Conservation Commission to do this work. The way that it works is Spokane County has a contract with the Washington Conservation Commission, and we receive just a little over $200,000 a year, and that money comes through, and it's a direct pass-through from us to the Conservation District. And when the board authorized this back in 2011, they asked me to administer the program on behalf of the county. And you may be asking yourself, okay, why a utility guy? Why do you have a utility person do this? Well, water quality in rivers from like the Little Spokane and Hangman, even though we might not have a wastewater treatment plant on it, so we do have a small one on Hangman. Water quality particularly impacts from nutrients and other pollutants affect the Spokane River. And when the regulatory agency, Washington Department of Ecology, develops our permits and our permit limits for our plants, they take into account pollution coming in from these other water bodies as well. So when we can reduce pollutants coming into our system, kind of similar to what I was saying about the commerce system earlier, every little bit helps, okay? So this voluntary stewardship program is fundamentally an alternative process to development of critical areas ordinances in agricultural areas of the county. So when the critical areas ordinances were developed, and we're thinking critical aquifer recharge areas, habitat, geologic unstable areas, things like that. So agricultural areas were given a waiver from critical areas ordinances. And so, and we have seen, and I know that Lindsay and Jacob could speak to a lot of the good work that they do to incentivize farmers and other land managers to engage in activities that restore riparian areas, stream banks, and so forth. And so that's basically what this project is about. And it's getting groups together. It's a voluntary process. There's not a lot of teeth to this process. It's a trust building process. It's getting folks around the table to basically share their concerns, share their ideas, and take on the hard work of actually figuring out, what do we monitor? How do we gauge our success? What are our goals? What are our objectives on how we get there? So not an easy job, and it's a lot of cat herding, and going into these meetings with open ears and open eyes and listening to all perspectives. But it's a trust building process. And before I turn it over to Lindsay, I'll just finish by saying, going back to when I joined the county about 20 years ago, one of my first projects was watershed planning. And I had an opportunity to meet Amber when she was representing an organization.
That was a long time ago.
It was. And again, that process was a very large process. In the end, it created a good plan that we built from that now the county has developed a water bank out of it, other rural water programs. I don't think the county would have been positioned to respond to Hearst if not for what we developed as part of the watershed planning process. The watershed plan that was developed following that and approved in 2021, I believe was founded on the trust and the relationships that was developed during that process. So I think when it comes to dealing with water quality in the agricultural sectors, this is a valuable process where we're building trust, we're building relationships, and making small incremental steps forward toward achieving greater water quality. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lindsay Chudas, who's going to speak to more specifics on the program.
Thanks, Rob. And as a just segue from the watershed plan, I think that doing watershed plan, that's how I got to know Rob originally. And watershed planning gave us a great model for this process as well, and for future planning processes. Like, it's helping us with getting diverse work groups together to then come up with implementation plans and then get the work done. So that has been a valuable measuring starting point for all of us in this process. I was just going to give a quick reflection of what's been going on in VSP since I've been there since the beginning of the process with Rob, and just kind of tell you what Spokane County has gotten out of the voluntary stewardship program since doing it. Just a couple key highlights. Basically, additional funding, like Rob said. We've gotten an improved monitoring program that the county is benefiting from as a whole, because we're not only looking at just the critical areas that intersect with agriculture, we're scaling this up so that it's countywide and usable for lots of places. We're obviously getting habitat improvement. We're getting improved relationships with the ag community. I think having the cattlemen, having producers like dryland farming producers, and as much as we can, having small urban growers participating in the work group is establishing better relationships. So that's a good thing. And then it's helping, as you said, Rob, assist with the meeting regulatory requirements, meeting those TMDLs, things like that.
What was that term?
The TMDL, the total maximum daily load, these are requirements set by the Department of Ecology on our various waterways here. the Spokane River being a major focus for phosphorus being the one that we are most concerned about. As you said, Rob, these voluntary measures, they build trust. That's really the most important thing that they get done for us. You know, we can say that we're meeting little benchmarks along the way, but establishing those good relationships in the community is probably the biggest thing. Secondly, it's given us a comprehensive monitoring program, which we've always struggled with being able to do at a countywide scale and a watershed scale. We've been able to monitor individual projects along the way, but being told that having to justify this and show that our projects are working and that things are changing and improving, or knowing that they aren't, has been something that the VSP has given us that opportunity. And we're seeing improvements because of it. So it's good that we're both monitoring projects and monitoring successes and failures. So it's giving us a better metric system. Finally, it's increasing currently we're ramping up our interaction with county staff. We see value in now having some more time with the planning department and the water resources department to just talk about what projects are happening, where things are going, how you can use different tools that we're developing. So trying to have, now that we've established what the work group is doing, what the work plan's goals are, how do we then bring county staff in and say, here's how we can have a little bit more backing. So in the end, Spokane County is sitting in a really good place. We are actually getting asked to do stuff for the state as far as the monitoring program, and we're showing leadership with the state, and they're very impressed with what the Spokane County Work Group has done. So we're developing those conservation activities, developing monitoring programs, and then helping other counties along the way. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jacob to talk about the specifics for 2022 and what's upcoming in 2023.
Is it okay if we take questions?
Oh yeah, for sure.
So how have you improved the monitoring? Do you have more monitoring stations?
No,
Or how are you monitoring the nutrients at different points?
Totally. It's actually less about individual monitoring activities and more cataloging. Just what are all the different entities that work in non-point source or any sort of project-based stuff? What are they doing, right? So we have to know all the different things going on. It's forcing us to have more conversations with the nonprofits, forcing us to have more conversations with ecology, forcing us to know just what everybody's doing. Then we're taking on the ground things and we're building from them remote sensing opportunities or remote sensing monitoring programs, like a vegetation change program. That's a new one that we did that we scaled up and made countywide, where we're actually showing where growth for plants is happening. We started looking at riparian areas specifically, and then we're looking at how much plant growth happens between 2021 and 2017. And then we'll do that again in 2026. So being able to see just where are we, or if there may be losses, right? Like if you have an ag field come through and they just decide to mow down the riparian area, then we know this is a problem. Then we can have a focused ground truth, go check it out, make sure that that actually happened. So it's giving us indicators. So we have both kind of high level county-wide monitoring and on the ground stuff. So it's sort of just synthesizing it and getting it cataloged so that everybody can understand it.
One of the tools that we're using increasingly within water resources as an environmental measurement tool is the satellite information and LiDAR. And
that's how you can tell if there's more plant
Correct.
disappearing or growing or, okay.
And that's how we monitor the performance of our water bank, particularly those who buy water rights directly from us. And that's how we gauge their water use, is based on how large their yard is and whether they irrigate it or not. And we use aerial information to determine that. We don't meter wells.
We spell it out pretty clearly, all the different steps in the monitoring in our 2-year report, which is kind of a narrative, maybe 30-page report, which will be coming out. You're going to describe that, but we're going to be coming out with another one. But as a catch-up, that's probably a really good place to start as far as the description of the program and then sort of the weeds on monitoring. Yeah, we're happy to share that with you guys. Thanks.
And so again, my name is Jacob Taylor. I'm the BSP coordinator in the district. And just to kind of build off of that, kind of a high level overview of where we're at and what we're up to right now. We're just now ramping up our efforts on that progress report that's due this August. And that report will summarize the conservation efforts that have been ongoing the last couple of years across the county, as well as several of those monitoring projects that I mentioned. And as Rob mentioned, we have some updates to the work group. We have 2 new work group members. One is Robin O'Quinn from Eastern Washington University. She's a new work group member. I'm looking forward to working with her. She seems like a really good fit. She has a background in ag, grew up in rural, I think she's from the Midwest, but she's real passionate about agriculture, and she's a biology professor at Eastern. And then Kat Hall is from the Lands Council, and she does a lot of restoration work around the county, and she's replacing Amanda, who's also from the Lands Council, so they're sort of just swapping out. My understanding is that those resolutions will be in front of you guys tomorrow, so appreciate any consideration you have on that. And then I guess we're also continuing with a lot of regular outreach. We're doing targeted mailings right now to priority watersheds around the county. We did some in Hangman, and we're about to send some out to Dragoon, Brentford Park. And we also have annual presentations we do for city council meetings around the county, the rural city council meetings. So we're continuing with that. And I guess just to circle back to the progress report, we are still crunching some numbers, but we're on track to meet our goals and benchmarks that are outlined in the work plan for this year. And so, yeah, that's about it. I think we're going to go to questions, but I can elaborate on any of that.
So this 2-year report that you're working on, that'll come out this summer?
Yep.
And that'll really have more details about have there been any changes in the amount of nutrients coming out of the
Well-
waterways into the river?
Sort of. We have 2 reporting cycles that we go through. We have 2-year reports, which are essentially narratives where we get time to describe specific projects that we want to highlight if we are meeting the goals and benchmarks like on it. Well, we can do really whatever we want with it, but this is how we choose to do it, is to highlight specific projects, talk about our monitoring efforts and how they've changed, because obviously as new information comes out and we get more sophisticated, we can make updates to that stuff. The 5-year report is where we truly crunch the numbers. It's where we spell out exactly how many changes take place, both for projects where we run statistical analyses on vegetative change, where we run analyses on any monitoring change, wetland change, things like that, and where we dive really detailed into those specific number crunching activities. But you don't get an opportunity in that 5-year report to discuss anything. Like, there's no narrative at all. So the 2-year report is where we get to build on all of that and describe what it is that we're up to. So
When's the 5-year due?
the next 5 years, 2026. Just turned one in last year, 2021, or 2 years ago.
Just a second, Commissioner French had a question as well.
Well, I was just going to say, when we started this program, we had 2 options. We could either develop internally our own critical areas team and come in and do all of this work, or we could adopt the volunteer stewardship program. We chose to do this because it's much more stakeholder driven, and there were a lot of fears, particularly with the ag and cattle industry, about, you know, what are you going to do with my ability to continue to use my land, to have access to water streams? I mean, you could have a property owner that's got a stream through the middle of the property, and all of a sudden he's been locked out and there's a lot of fear. And so, I really appreciate the fact that both, all three have talked about how important it is to build trust. Because when we started down this road, trust was a 4-letter word. And it took some while to develop those relationships, which they've been able to develop. But I would characterize them as being fragile. And so it would be real easy to all of a sudden take this program and go the wrong direction and put us all underwater and stuff. So I really appreciate the work that you do and the fact that we've got a variety of different voices on all sides of the issue at the table, trying to find a path forward. So thanks for everything that you do.
Great, thank you.
And I think to that, I think that, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, how's the membership of the work group put together? Is that by however we decide, or is there slots for different groups?
Well,
Yeah, if I remember right, and Commissioner French, you probably remember in detail, the commission, we solicit or we have different boxes to check from different sectors of the community. And then, so we take in applications, and when people do an application, they decide what role they're going to fill. And then we've presented all of them to the commissioners, or originally when we did the work plan, we presented everybody. And then I can't remember if there were people, I don't know if we had more applications at that time than we had slots. Yeah. So you guys chose through that group of applications, started the work group, and now we're keeping it around that same size, and as terms fall off, then we replace it as necessary.
And it is by category. So, when we originally set up the program, we tried to identify a broad range of stakeholders and said, okay, this slot has to be somebody from whatever and stuff. So it is by category. And then they solicit people to fill the different categories and stuff. And from when we adopted it till today, I don't know that we've altered the categories. So I think we did a pretty good job of getting a good cross-section of people that didn't like each other starting out. I mean, there was a lot of fear.
There was.
I attended a couple of those early meetings and barely made it out. It's because there's so much passion around this, and you're affecting the livelihood for some of the property owners that land that's been in their family for generations is now potentially being put at risk. And so there's a lot of emotion when we started out and stuff, but they found a way to work their way through it and stuff. So, yeah, and casualties have been buried, and so it's not no, I'm just kidding. They haven't been buried yet.
And you've had some landowners that have been willing for like riparian restoration to happen on their property.
oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
That's their specialty.
That's the idea.
Conservation.
Well, and there
Identify
was
where
grant
those
money
key areas are.
available
Right.
to be able to help compensate farmers and ranchers to be able to recapture some of that riparian area.
Right.
So, they received a benefit for being able to improve the quality of the water.
And the nice part of this is that we're already doing a lot of the things at the Conservation District and applying for grants that are supportive of this voluntary stewardship program. And so it just sort of works hand in hand already. At the time, we had one that was called what was the RCPP stand for? The Regional Conservation Partnership Program, which provided a huge amount of influx of money for riparian areas, no-till installation and improvement of upland practices as well. And we were able to count those in our BSP monitoring and database project development or project monitoring program.
And what are some of the areas, I know, because Layton Creek has been one of the areas that there's been a lot of effort there and a lot of stewardship happening.
Right.
So what are some of the other areas around the county?
Well, everywhere, I mean, as Jacob said, we're doing a focused mailing and outreach effort in the Dragoon Creek watershed, partially because it was identified as a priority watershed or priority sub-watershed in the WIRE 55 watershed plan for non-point source improvement projects. Hangman Creek for sure. Dead Man Creek, yeah, so, but we'll solicit anywhere. We're shameless when it comes to helping people in Spokane County.
Enthusiastic.
Yeah, it's one of those words for sure.
Well, and the other thing is with, as a result of the work that they do, the water aquifers in those areas have been able to start to replenish themselves over time. And that was part of the challenge we were having with Hearst, is that some of those water shed areas were depleting water and jeopardizing existing property owners.
These projects slow water down through the watersheds, like what we're trying to do.
Any other questions for them?
Well, I'd just like to thank them for doing what they do. They do awesome work, and they're out on the front lines. And I would just finish by saying that many of the original work group members are still there. And I think that's testament to their leadership and facilitation.
And I know too, I mean, that, you know, the grants that you get are valuable, and so just all the work that you guys are doing there, and knowing where to go and where to look and all of that is huge. So, because I know your funding is not huge, so, you know, so really appreciate that you guys are really spending the time and looking for those grant opportunities to do these projects. So, thank you.
Thanks for the remedial
Yeah, you're
training
good.
for
Absolutely.
those of us who are new.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's a lot to wrap your mind around. It's a weird program that way.
Across the way.
Thank you, and say hi to Vicki.
Will do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Kyle, have we wrapped up with all of your?
Thank you so much.
Okay, perfect, thank you. And that's gonna take us to action.
But before we get away from public works and stuff, Matt, I've been working with a property owner down on 195 in Spangle with regard to dealing with the gravel permit down there, gravel operation and stuff. And so this has become a growing concern for, as I understand it, the road that services the gravel pit is a county road and it's getting destroyed. I know that we've sent the sheriff's office down there to try and deal with the operator, and that's not been successful. We've had our road crew out of the South District try and do some things to address the road and stuff. But I would love to be able to have an opportunity to kind of meet with you guys and maybe county legal and find out what can we do to save the integrity of the road and also address the traffic that, I guess these trucks are exceeding the speed limit. That's why I sent the sheriff down, but it's not something we can monitor on a regular basis. So I'd like to just reach out to you guys and see if we can find a path forward.
Yeah, no, happy to facilitate that.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, well, I am back again, commissioners, to chat about the updated resolution for the changes for 18-0950 open public labor negotiations. So in your packets that Gina sent on Friday, there was another amended version that I think really gets us to what I was asked.
I don't know if it got printed. Is it just look at an
It's
email?
not printed, Ron, if you wanna throw it on the screen for me then.
Oh, that'd be great. Thank you.
So Amber and Chris saw this on Friday when we briefed you just on general labor before you got here to where we are now. And then for the rest of you, this is where we landed early Friday morning. So we had a couple of different drafts that went through. On Friday morning, we took one more pen and ink to it, so to speak, to really kind of whittle it down to, I think, what truly reflects the thoughts that I heard from each of you as we talked over the last few weeks. So where we landed is really, ensuring that we are still being transparent in nature where we can, that we truly do value our employees and are committed to working collaboratively with all Spokane County employees. And that with the updated legislation or updated things that have changed in respect to the city of Spokane, recognizing we can no longer require open public bargaining as a condition of negotiations. And so through that recognition, this resolution basically states that while we can't require it, we do still encourage, if both parties mutually agree upon open bargaining, that they are welcome to do so, but that it is not a requirement for both parties. So that's essentially where it landed with that spirit of transparency. I do want to talk a little bit through not the last therefore, but the second to last therefore that Scott and I were kind of noodling over last minute. And so it states that Spokane County will send a copy of this resolution to the county CEO, to all union representatives, and all others deemed appropriate by county officials. I wanted to get your feedback, commissioners. At the end of middle of 2022, we really started taking a different approach with our own employees and being very communicative, very direct, factual, open, transparent on what was occurring. We noticed this morning, and thank you to Scott for noticing it, but the word employees is not included here. And so I am happy to add it back in. If the direction from you is that we will continue to operate in that manner moving forward, which is communicating with our employees as well. I think from my perspective, from an HR side, it went really well. Everywhere I've ever worked, employees always say they want more communication, right? And so I think the direction that we took at the end of last year really started opening that door for honest, factual, which they have to be, factual communications, right? Transparent in nature. So I'm happy to add that in here and then continue to move in that direction moving forward if you guys would like me to do so. That when it's relevant, that we have communications that are impactful for our repped and non-repped employees, that we are consistently talking about that messaging and providing those updates so all of our employees understand what's happening. Because as we all know, many employees don't sit and watch these meetings every week. And so if you guys would like me to continue to do that, we can get that added tomorrow for your consent agenda. It will require the board to take this as a separate action and with the amended language to note that. But I wanted to just present that information and get any additional feedback, thoughts, anything from you guys, and then also understand how you would like to direct myself and my team for communications with this as we move forward.
I'd be in favor of adding employees to it. I mean, that's, of all the comments I've received more back from employees and union members saying thank you than anything else. So I would want to recognize them as one of the deliberate beneficiaries of this resolution.
I mean, you say employees several times ahead of it, and then for some reason not there, so I agree.
So just to that second, therefore on the, it's, yes.
And so you want to take it by leave tomorrow instead of waiting and having the consent agenda?
Commissioner, it's on your consent agenda for tomorrow already. So it's been published like this. So for public feedback, the public has seen this document. So if you do take it, if you do want to add it and amend it, we could do that today and update it on the agenda, but you'll want to take it as a separate item to allow for public comment if anyone has public comment on it. So form and function as a traditional by leave, but it's already on the consent agenda, so it's just more of an amendment to that resolution.
Do you want to have a motion to add the word employees then to that statement today?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow, okay.
I think tomorrow, because then we'd have to
Take some testimony on that, okay.
testimony, whether it be today or tomorrow, so since it's already on the agenda.
Can you highlight the change for us for?
Yes, I can highlight the change. And then, so thank you for that. So then from a just general, I guess, would you guys like me to continue communicating like I did last year? So moving forward, when we have situations like this, and it comes out of my office was how it was directed last year, but that as the HR, just basically giving the update, factual, here's what changed. Last year, it came under my signature, under my letterhead. Would you guys like me to continue that practice when we do have communications like this that are just knowledge share basically for all employees?
That's a good idea.
I think so.
I think just ensuring that we're aware before those communications go out.
Perfect. So I will drop this tomorrow, based after consent occurs. We'll send out the communication out of my office. So just so you guys know the timing that will come out this week.
I just wanted to thank you for your time meeting with us and working on some revisions to it and adding some language around working collaboratively with all employees. I just appreciate your work on that.
Thank you.
Well, I guess if there's any other questions or comments, then we can address it tomorrow as well.
I'm giving you a bunch of time back, commissioners. We did, just for kind of, I guess, a little more, just to follow, we did a verbal briefing with our two new commissioners, like I mentioned on Friday morning. Legal has put together kind of a 2-page document on the Lincoln County versus the city of Spokane questions that you guys had. We're just getting those finalized. Haley Day is here with us, and she tirelessly worked this weekend to get that put together. We're just putting a final set of eyes on it with Josh Crow, our labor relations manager. But we will send that to all 5 of our commissioners so that you all have access to the same document here in the coming, hopefully, day or so. But we're just making sure that everybody has had a chance to review it before we send it out to you.
I was expecting it would be on next week's consent. Was I just confused? Okay. Has there been any heads up to our unions that we're going to be considering this tomorrow, or is it just, it's public on the website?
It's public on the website, and that headset, Josh Crow is working on that right now, so that'll go out today. We try to time our employee communications and union communications somewhat closely so that the message is consistent to all groups. Also, I wanted to make sure that it actually is moving forward for tomorrow before we sent any additional information out to our bargaining group. So that is something that Josh is getting ready as we speak. That was his task this morning to get worked through.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so then that's going to take us to Jeff McMorris. Rotating chair.
I'm sorry.
So I'm gonna give us a little update where we are in the boards and commissions that we talked through last week. Tomorrow on consent, you'll see a public notice at the top of the agenda. That's for the Fair and Expo Advisory Board. Legal let us know that we do need to do an open public meeting on that one. So since it'll be voted on, tomorrow you're voting on just the notice of public hearing. So that'll push it up 2 weeks, February 7th would be when we deal with that one. That particular board, it is fully constituted right now with two terms expire in 24, 1 in 25, 3 in 26. The youth has also been open since the beginning of the school year. There's one person, Craig Oldsall out of Meade, District 3. His term expires February 12th, just in a few weeks. Aaron Gertel has asked that the board consider reappointing him. So that will be a decision point that needs to be made as we reconfigure that board. The other 3 that we talked through will all be up next week in some fashion. The No Shooting Advisory Committee, that was posted last week, so will be up next week. That one's an at-large, so we don't have to worry about assigning specific spots, specific districts. The SWAC, we'll have the resolution ready also. That's just increasing 2 from the 3 to 5 commissioner change. And then the Parks Board, that is one where we do have 5 by district, 2 at large. We have 3 continuing people that terms expire in 24, 3 that just expired the end of last year. 2 of those 3, different commissioners have said that's gonna be my person. The third one will probably be an at-large. So will both be the new resolution, which is changing the format to the 5-2, but you'll also see several reappointments coming up. And then I haven't heard back yet from the lawyers exactly how we're gonna do the 3 people who are midterm continuing, but what sort of resolution it will be that will direct, Joe Schmo is representing whatever district. So you'll see possibly a few resolutions on consent next week around parks, just depending on how the lawyers decide is best to do it. And so nothing today. Tomorrow you'll see the 1 public notice and then possibly a bunch of resolutions next week.
So, question, Jeff, on the Fair Board, do you need us to get back to you and identify one that's being appointed by
So I was
by
gonna
each district?
circulate
Okay,
that current membership, so you guys could start making that decision on what makes sense on
I
the
think
district.
in the conversation last week, a couple people identified, but I don't think I had a chance to look at the other names. I did get a citizen email of someone who's interested in serving on the Fair Board, so I don't know if, like you said, there was only 1 person that is potentially up for reappointment. All the other ones, the terms are continuing.
Correct, the next opening will be February of 24. The person whose term is expiring has been on the board since 2007. There are 3 Fair Board members that have been on the board since 2007. And Cal Fair Director's preference for me to have this person have 1 more term. But of course, that's her voicing her preference, that's the decision for the board.
So I may just hold on getting back to this person, because basically we don't know if we have an open, we're not know if we're opening anything up at this point.
Correct, that's the decision that you'll need to make
Okay,
once you have the public hearing.
right. First, just a hearing on the new composition. Right, got it.
Unless-
And then, Jeff, there is the Veterans Advisory Board, which is on as a consent agenda tomorrow. And that's just approved, that's not a public hearing, doesn't require it, it's just reconstituting it based on the previous feedback that you've given to Jeff.
That's actually Kat did the work on that one.
Cat did, yes.
We're good, thanks.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll take us to Justin.
Hi.
Justin, nice to see you.
Morning, Commissioners. Scott. I'll be giving a briefing on the HCA contract that will be up for the docket on the 31st. It might be helpful to give some background on the contract under community services. And then we'll go into just kind of what that looks like for us. So back in 2018, when integrated managed care went in place in Spokane Regional Service Area, we actually oversaw the Medicaid and non-Medicaid services under the BHO and RSAT. And when that transition occurred in 2018, we, under the direction of the board, implemented the BHASO under community services, which now oversees all of the non-Medicaid portions of the contract and the proviso specific to additional services the state always dumps on top, care coordination services and additional. That also includes funding from Department of Commerce in conjunction with other programs that we're running. Since that time, that contract has expanded to include various other programs, Recovery Navigator, HOST, we have AOT oversight. So those are all part of the original mandate under the Healthcare Authority contract. The primary core responsibilities under that contract are for involuntary treatment services and for the provision of non-Medicaid within available resources. So I think that's a critical point because the required or must pays are the involuntary, that is the crisis response system, RCL, regional crisis line, which in conjunction with 988, and then it also includes inpatient hospitalizations for individuals under 7105, the statute that does involuntary treatment. And so that is our primary responsibility. The available resources also includes the block grant funding from the federal government. That includes the mental health block grant and the substance abuse block grant. Those are provided to individuals out in our sub-delegated agreements, and those specifically provide for within available funding. That includes outpatient, inpatient, substance use treatment, and then also our ancillary CJTA funded services under the state. So that is kind of a totality of those. I mean, this is a continuation of those. We have the network in place, so you'll be seeing downstream contracts go into place as well in the coming future, but this is the upstream from the Healthcare Authority directly to the Spokane Regional PHA.
Hi, Justin.
Yes.
Nice to meet you.
Yes.
Amber Walter. We got a little bit of the overview of some of your programs from Kat. So give me an example. If it's not the involuntary treatment, which I know is a big area that you guys oversee, what would be the other non-Medicaid type of program that you would have to? So if someone is a Medicaid eligible, they're able to go directly through a Medicaid insurer to get their care. So what would be the type of person that you would oversee then? The type of folks that wouldn't have their own insurance or that would be Medicaid insured?
And actually, that's a little bit of a tricky spot because it's not necessarily non-insured individuals, because under the statute for 7105, there is no requirement for commercial to actually be required to pay for involuntary treatment. Medical necessity doesn't apply, or doesn't apply to us, it applies to them. So they can just say, we're not going to cover it. The state then mandates for us to cover it. So for the vast majority, it's anyone who doesn't have Medicaid would have or covered by involuntary treatment.
And that's a block grant amount, or where does that money come from?
So there's two different pots we generally utilize for that. That's general safe fund dollars that the Healthcare Authority and the contract provides to us.
Okay.
And then to a lesser extent, for Spokane County residents only, the mental sales tax for a portion of those.
Okay.
For
And you also manage some of those a lot of the outlying counties, some of their programs as well.
Yeah, the primary responsibility in those 6-county region under the RSA is crisis services. So that is DCRs going out for detention, mobile crisis response. We don't have a lot of available resources to cover other ones. It's primarily core within Spokane County. That's just how the nature of the beast goes with the population size. The other services that are funded for that population is a segment of individuals that aren't covered under Medicaid or are Medicaid but don't have covered services. Fee-for-service Medicaid, it's a wide swath of individuals, which includes AIN or American Indian, Alaska Native populations who have not opted in. And then also individuals under unique state programs like coal, dust, some historical ones, and other specialized programs. And so we cover certain coordination with them. Then we cover anyone who is at or below 220% federal poverty level. And then there are some that extend beyond that dependent upon the state's allowances, but that's the vast majority. Mostly adults, many youth are covered by the service, so you don't see a lot of youth. Most all of them, and pregnant and parenting women are also primarily covered by Medicaid. And then in addition to that, we run specialty programs like the Recovery Navigator, which came out of the Blake Bill, the Housing, Homeless Outreach and Stabilization Transition Teams are host. And then we do expanded crisis response teams like the Children, Youth, and Family Mobile Crisis. And then recently we won an award with SAMHSA for the Mobile Response and Stabilization Services, MRSS program, to provide expanded care to youth and families in Spokane County.
I would love to get some more info on maybe some of those latter ones that you just talked about. The newer ones like the Recovery Navigator and the one you just mentioned for families. And
yeah, MRSS, children, yes, I there's a lot of programs I could go for hours, but yes, we definitely provide.
Yeah, just a quick overview would be interesting. So, thank you. So was the contract then attached to was it attached to the agenda? Oh, maybe you're passing it around right now. No, this is something else.
No, it's something else.
Yes, I believe so.
It was probably a large document. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And so this is our contract with the Healthcare Authority.
That is correct.
Having us be the BHASO.
Correct, a continuation of those services, yeah.
Is that an annual arrangement or is it multi-year with the state?
It's annual.
Okay.
And then, like you said, then we'll see a lot of contracts come once we have that overarching agreement again established.
And all
we'll
these
see
little
all
ones.
the,
Okay.
All of
bunch
our
of contracts.
subrecipients, there's quite a bit of it. We have one of the larger networks in the state, other than King County, but they're a different beast.
Very good. Any other questions for Justin?
I'll sign up for that briefing
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Deep dive.
Well, just to warn you.
Maybe in, it doesn't have to be urgent, in a couple, in the next couple
Yes.
months, maybe we can come out and visit you at one of your facilities and get some more details.
Yes, but no, it's a lengthy thing and I tend to go off, so be forewarned.
You have a lot of information to keep track of, so thank you.
I was gonna say, he's been working very hard and diligent, and he has a lot of information on all of this that, he's great, so we're very lucky.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Awesome.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Thank you so much.
Great to stay ahead of time. Okay, that's gonna take us to miscellaneous. Go ahead, I'll let you.
Yeah, so board, this is discussion on the board retreat that was brought up a couple of weeks ago, maybe it was last week. Cannot recall, maybe a couple weeks ago, yes. So as a follow-up, I had sent out an email to the 5 of you with some requests for input on an agenda. I had seeded it with a couple of ideas that have been brought up by all you already. I've received some feedback from Commissioner CUNY, some from Commissioner French as well. So I guess some questions for you all is, working forward or working backwards, do you want to set a date and location for the retreat now, or do you want to allow some of the other feedback to come in and then look at the types of topics, agenda items, and then make some determinations on which of those items you want to dedicate into a retreat and how much time you want to dedicate them. That could be another way of moving forward on it. So I want to put that out. Another question for you all is, do you want a facilitator for this meeting? Probably someone with knowledge of government and local government specifically, if that's a preference. Length of retreat, that sort of thing. So I just wanted to open up to the board, and I'm happy, like I said in my email, to continue aggregating the topical stuff to bring back to all of you and have it in front of you to be able to say, yep, let's put that on. No, that can be for a later time or just during our regular agendas and whatnot.
And Ashley had, she talked to me on Friday, so Friday, I don't know, sometime
A
last
day.
week. Of an idea as well, so I wanted to have her talk about what she's doing with your leadership team.
We, Spokane County in the past, when John Dixon was still here and Sherry Hansen, who used to work in HR, had utilized a tool called StrengthsFinder for throughout the county as kind of a, I guess, an engagement tool, maybe is what I would call it. Since I've been here over the last 2 years, while StrengthsFinder is a great tool, it's probably not the tool that Spokane County needs as we are looking toward how do we build culture, how do we find paths of communication and working together, how do we identify our kind of work styles and then those we work with, and finding a way to collaboratively mesh our styles. So I tasked the HR team last year to go look for a new tool that might be more beneficial for the county as a whole as we look toward enhancing culture, enhancing work environments, and especially teams as they work together. We have moved away from StrengthsFinder and we are embracing the DISC, which is a great tool that really focuses on 4 quadrants of kind of our work styles and communication styles. We are right now going through the first training, so to speak, in HR, so we kind of iron out the bumps before we roll it out to the rest of the organization, and we have kind of a strategic plan on what that probably looks like But it's a really cool tool. I've used it in my past life. Any of you that have worked with me know that I'm pretty direct. I like to get things done. I want to get through. I'm not a big details person, right? And so the DISC assessment really looks at our 4 quadrants and looks at, direct, an influencer, more of a support, and then conscientious or kind of analytical. And so what this assessment does is it looks at our natural style and then our amended style, so to speak, at work. So how do we maybe change that a little bit when we're working together with teams? So it's a cool, I think it's a really cool tool that I've liked to bring into different groups and say, okay, I know I'm a strong DIC and my S, which is weird because I work in HR, but my empathy and my people is actually my lowest natural trait. But my amended work style is they actually kind of balance themselves out. But it's really good for my team to understand when somebody brings something at me. If they come with 40 pages of details, I'm lost, right? I squirrel out. I'm in my head processing the next moves that we need to do. On the flip side, I have team members who are extremely detail oriented, and I know if I walk in and say, I don't care about your details, we just need to make a decision, they're gonna panic and they're going to kind of go into flight mode. They're not gonna know how to make those decisions, and we're gonna not have strong communication, right? We're gonna not be able to work through our problems. So I would propose to this group, if you're open to it, that as a part of this retreat, we could do the DISC assessment. It takes about 10-15 minutes. You do it on your own first. You have a chance to read through your kind of natural and then abilities when you're at work, so how those kind of shift. And then going through those as a team, looking at the 4 quadrants, understanding how we are, but then also how our skills work together and complement each other so that we understand potentially what might be some strategies, angles, and communication styles that we could do with each other. So to be fair, we're in our infancy at the county. We're just starting to roll this out, but I thought in the event you guys are interested, I'm happy to facilitate an hour or so of that section of the day to just go through that with you. I think it might be good maybe to throw Scott Simmons in with that as well, potentially senior leadership if they will also be included in the retreat. But I open it up to this team to think about. Definitely don't need a decision today. I'm happy to share my assessment with you if you wanted to look at it and really kind of see what it looks like when it comes out. But from my past life, it's been a really strong tool to help teams understand the different dynamics that each of us have within ourselves naturally, but then also how we present ourselves at work. It also talks a bit about, when things are on track and everything's going well, this is where I tend to land. But if things are out of my control, I maybe start to get a little bit more, and I'll admit, I get a little more short. I care even less about the details. I just want to make a decision. I can come across as abrasive. So it was a good reset for myself, even to take this lately and to remember in those moments, how am I reacting and is this helpful? So again, happy to share my assessment with you, and you can look at it and think if it's something you guys would like to do as a group. It is a document that I'm not sure if it's open to PR, so I'll have to look at that for you guys, but it would be something though that we could discuss if you wanted to. So just thought I'd put it out there for now for you guys to think about as you're building the agenda. And then to Scott's point, as far as a facilitator goes, I've already actually had one person reach out to me asking about being a facilitator potentially. Through Braver Angels. They had mentioned maybe expanding this and looking at inviting council members in City and Valley. And I don't know if you guys are at that stage yet. That might be something you kick down the road. But I just wanted to let you know I have had one person so far reach out and ask about potentially being a facilitator. So I'm happy to have that conversation with them as well if that's a direction you guys would like us to go once we probably get through Scott's request. But we can then at that point figure out what type of facilitator maybe you really need and what does that scope look like.
The Braver Angel is a contact that I sent to Ashley, and that was, they did a presentation at the WASAC meeting in November, and the presentation was really more about civil engagement as opposed to facilitation and stuff. And so the whole session was really about how do you engage in controversial issues in a civil fashion. I don't know, I don't have any experience with them as a facilitator. And so I don't want to represent that they're a facilitator because I have no knowledge of that. I definitely recommend that we do have facilitators so that we can all engage in the conversation, but, and there are some here in town that are good and some here in town that I wouldn't waste any money on, and we can have that conversation at some point. But that's just my 2 cents.
So yes, thumbs up to a facilitator. And I have a few ideas of just folks that, I've experienced, I think have been pretty good. So I can pass those on to Scott or Ashley. And yeah, maybe we should set the date and at least just a time frame of like a morning or an afternoon to get it on the calendar. And then I'll have time this week to get back with maybe some other agenda items. We can kind of fill it in. Maybe next week we can look through and actually create the final agenda, or, depending on when we can schedule. But it would be good if we could maybe find that time. I feel like my calendar is already getting filled up all the way through February. So, but I know we don't always have standing meetings, right? On, like tomorrow morning, we don't have a meeting. So like there's times that we can fit it in when we normally would be here Mondays or Tuesdays, right? Is that what you're thinking? Even if we do it off-site, we would, anyway.
Those
We
are
wouldn't have
certainly available.
conflicts with like SRTC or Health Board or STA or other meetings.
And we have done it both ways, where we've taken a full day and dedicated, and then that way we get a free lunch out of it. Anybody that tells you there's no free lunch.
I thought there was no such thing.
So, but the other thing is you could do a Monday afternoon and think about it that night, come back on a Tuesday morning. And, I agree with you. I don't want it, that when you get into the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you start to interfere with all the other committees and stuff. And then it becomes a little bit more problematic, but taking it out of a Monday schedule or Monday, Tuesday schedule might be the easiest way. And doing it off-site, don't do it in this building, do it off-site. In a situation that's
Different environment.
Yeah, well, we did it at the convention center a number of times when we were doing retreats on budgets and things like that. That's a nice venue, but I'm
get
sure
some nice
there's others.
views.
Yeah.
Yeah, just over at the Champions Room. So, I would probably suggest doing an all-day Monday. And then if we could do Tuesday morning for normal business stuff, for the Tuesday, just I have a feeling that we'll have enough.
The agenda items will
day.
start to, yeah.
And, if we don't fill the whole day, we don't fill the whole day, but I think, I would suggest probably a Monday to.
And then if we decide to do, Ashley, I appreciate I just did the Strengths Finder in November, December at the community center. We did it as a whole staff. And it's great, but it doesn't really, you can see where everybody else is on your team, but it doesn't necessarily help you to figure out how to work together as a team. Maybe there is a segment of it that does that, but it was like we all knew, okay, this person's strong here, this person's strong here, but what does that mean to actually work together and identify? So this method seems interesting because it gets more at a team board type of structure.
Yeah, the Strengths Finder was very interesting, but it's very much more as a leader, like what are my people's strengths, and then how do I optimize their work to their strengths, right? The DISC analysis is really more of this is how we tend to operate naturally in our workspace, and how do we pull all of our best assets together and work together.
So having a full day would allow us, if we choose to do something like that, we'd have more time to do that.
The only caution about that is, and Ashley touched on it, is it a public record or not? Because, you do that and then all of a sudden you give an ammunition to people that don't like you about all your weaknesses and stuff. And so that was a serious concern we had the last time we did this, was there's got to be a mechanism for being able to do that. Otherwise, we'll need to provide everybody the opportunity to tap out.
I will say that's why I like the DISC better than Strengths Finder. So Strengths Finder is very much like here's the 5 things you're really good at. Like one of mine is strategic planning, or, and here's the 38 things that don't rise to the top, right? And so I agree. I think Strengths Finder can be extremely it's a great tool when used the right way, but if it's used in the wrong light, it can be picked apart very easily for, oh, Ashley's empathy falls at number 30 of 38. Why is she working in HR, right? So I totally see that from a StrengthsFinder. Just because it's different, and I'll send you guys my analysis. Feel free to read it or not. It's like 38 pages, but at least you can get a blush for like what it covers, right? Yeah, a lot of it talks about the tool itself.
Just light reading.
Yeah, extremely difficult.
I was thinking like 3 pages maybe.
Yeah, the top 5 really are what's going to talk to you about like my styles, right? But if you guys wanted to look at that and then decide if you think it's relevant, but it definitely focuses more on just those 4 quadrants, not like here's what your strengths are and here's all of these soft skills that maybe you're not good at. It definitely does not have that lens, which StrengthsFinder does. So I hear you, Commissioner. That's why I'm really excited about this tool, is it's not so personal as to here's what you're good at and here's maybe what you're not good at.
Keep in mind that it does give your spouse ammunition to come back and say, I told you so. You know, you wanna try and avoid that.
That's my main concern.
Yeah, exactly.
Did my wife get a hold of this?
Exactly.
Make her file a PR article. Don't make it easy for, so.
You're not.
Okay, so kind of hearing, maybe try to land at a date right now, and then work towards, I'm hearing generally support for facilitator. Ashley's gonna send out the disc so you can all evaluate it, see if that's something that you want to do. Probably a full day, so now it's which day, and we can work on.
It'd be good if everybody was, here in person, so people are gonna be out of town.
It's gotta be done in person.
Yeah. Cause I know you had one date soon that you're gonna be out.
Well, I like the idea of Mary's, just take a Monday and take the whole day and let's do it, so.
Move the
So look for a Monday when
typical
we're all.
Monday morning briefing over to Tuesday.
Tuesday, and that means we could do it next Monday if you wanted to. Oh, you won't have a facilitator on board right there.
Just the Monday holiday in February.
20th is President's Day, I see here. The 6th, 13th, 20th, 27th are the 4 Mondays in February.
I'm here all February.
I'm not here the 6th.
We could go without you. No, I'm just kidding, just kidding.
So 13th or 27th.
The 13th I'll be zooming in.
So we got the 27th. Does the 27th work?
Scott is.
I will be out.
I'll be out too.
Cancel. Yeah. Who gave you,
I just
who
heard
signed
Commissioner
off on
Jordan
your
wouldn't be here either,
Oh,
so
okay.
should let him speak
Man,
first.
if we could find a facilitator for next, but I don't know. We're gonna be all coming back from GSI trip this week and
Is the 30th too soon then?
I think so.
yeah, probably to get someone lined up and. So what's the first week of
So
March?
March 6th, 13th, 20th, or 27th?
No, March 6th is the only day in March works.
Oh, that's right, cause you're gonna be out. So the 6th? 6th? March 6th?
March 6th.
And that's
Yep, I'm in there.
And that's a 2023, right? Okay.
Believe so. Okay, so head nods for March 6th, all right. What I'll do is, I'll get the latest updates that Commissioner CUNY and Commissioner French sent to me. I'll send those all out so that
Okay.
you don't have to recreate
Yeah.
stuff and you can see what else is already on there. Maybe it already addresses some of the things that you were thinking about.
Perfect.
Sounds good.
Okay?
And any other miscellaneous items? Any executive session items?
I'm not aware of any.
No, Commissioner, I don't have any.
Okay. Then I think we get to adjourn early today. Look at that.
Give some time back.
Making good progress.
Okay,
We're
so
catching
it's 11:05 and we will adjourn for the day and we'll be back tomorrow at our 2 o'clock consent agenda meeting.